McLarens are notorious for their high depreciation rates, so now that the general car market is correcting, I can imagine that you as an owner or buyer would like to know what's happening in the McLaren market. Are McLarens returning to their initial steep depreciation curves, or are things actually not that bad? Did any of these questions pop up in your mind lately? Then this is a must-watch video. We'll cover the price trends for almost all McLaren models and figure out if they are performing better, worse, or on par with the market. As always, we'll start with a market overview before looking at the price trends. Over here we have the US market of December, split by the different models. Prices start at $100,000 for a 12C and stretch up to $800,000 for a 765 LT. The market bottom is, by the way, a lot higher than 2 years ago. Back then you could buy a 12C for less than $100,000. Looking at the broader picture, you can also see that the price overlap is large. Who would have thought that with such a diversified model range? If your budget stretches to $190,000, 3 out of the 8 models are within reach. You can choose between a 650S, a 570S or a GT. Add another $100,000 and you can choose between the much praised 675 LT, the 720S and 600 LT. Now after that quick overview, it is time to have a look at the price trends. Many of you will know that the exotic car market topped and that depreciation is back. The McLaren market is no exception. The question is whether they are dropping quicker than the rest of the market. We saw, for example, that 720S prices plummeted quite quickly after their introduction. So let's see what's happening in the market. We start with the 12C and work our way up to the 765 LT. Over here we have the price trend for the 12C, and this looks very similar to the market trend. Prices increased by 22% between April 2020 and May 2022, and this means that the median price was pushed up to $130,000 and that it was no longer possible to buy a 12C for less than $100,000. Since the market top, prices decreased by 8.1%, and this price change is statistically confirmed, so this means that it's unlikely to be the result of chance. Yet, it are the cars with more than 17,000 miles that saw the largest price decrease. The high mileage segment experienced a price decrease between 10 and 15%. I also checked the price trends for the coupes and the convertibles, but supply is too low to get reliable price trends over there. Now speaking about supply, we can see that this is in line with the general market trend. At the start of the pandemic it decreased, demand was high, but when prices continued to soar, supply also increased. Perhaps these were people who were a bit too late to the party and still wanted to sell their car for top dollar. Now that the price frenzy is over, we can see that supply is decreasing. And with that, it's time to have a look at the 650S. We can see that prices increased by 21.7% between May 2020 and May 2022. And this number is exactly the same as the increase in the 12C market. Most likely, that's not a coincidence. Before prices surged, you could pick one up for less than $140,000, while you had to bring at least $160,000 at the market top of last summer. Yet, also 650S's decreased since the summer. Prices are down by 6.2% or $11,000, and this drop is visible in the complete market. Over here we have the price development split by the mileage buckets, so this means that the orange line represents the prices for cars between 6.2 and 10.9 thousand miles. Looking at the most recent period, we can see that cars from all mileage buckets decreased in price. Low mileage cars decreased slightly more, but they also saw larger increases during the pandemic. Premiums for these cars were outrageous, but the market appears to be correcting now. And the same applies to the 675 LT. Over here we have the prices for the coupes and the spiders. Now before looking at the price changes, it is important to note that the time frame is slightly shorter than in the previous graphs. It only starts in July 2021. Second, we can see that the confidence intervals in the coupe market are quite large. Supply is low in this market as there are usually less than 10 cars listed for sale. So this means that the price uncertainty is large. Looking at the prices, we can see that coupe prices increased by 5.7% and spider prices by 10%. The market top, however, occurred at different dates, but this could be the result of low supply. Looking at the price decreases, we can see a drop of 11% in the spider market and 5.2% in the coupe market. And with that, it's time to have a look at the price trends for the 570S. Over here we have the price trend split by the Spyders and the Coupes. Compared to the previous graph, you can see that the trends are very similar. Supply is large enough to get reliable estimates, and this most of the time means that the price trends move in parallel. Between May 2020 and May 2022, prices increased by 17.5% in the Coupe market and 21.4% in the Spyder market. So these numbers are similar to what we've seen before. Looking at the other side of the market top, we can see that prices decreased by 5.7% in the Coupe market and by 9.5% in the Spyder market. There can be several reasons for this difference. First, the Spyders are on average 1 year younger than the Coupes, so it is only natural that they will depreciate a bit more. Second, the Spyders might be more susceptible to the winter effect. After all, who wants to drive a Spyder in the winter? Moreover, we have also seen in several mid-engine Ferrari markets that the Spyders are decreasing faster than the Coupes. So overall these price trends are in line with the market trend, but we cannot say the same about the supply trends. Over here we can see that supply dipped during the pandemic, but has been increasing ever since. And this contrasts to what we can see in many other markets. Usually we see a dip, followed by an increase up until the point that prices stopped. During the last 6 months, the majority of the market saw a flat or decreasing supply development. Now this increase in supply does not per definition mean that the price decrease will accelerate. If you are subscribed to this channel, you know that supply on a standalone basis is not a good predictor for the prices. It's something to keep an eye on though. And with that, it's time to dive into the price trends for the 720S. Now due to the fact that there are time points in which many almost brand new McLarens were pushed to the market, it makes more sense to look at the price development per model year than at the aggregate trend. So let's start with the Coupes. Over here we can see that 2018 and 2019 Coupes increased by 17% between May 2020 and May 2022. So this means that the older, used cars benefited from the price surge. As you can see, this does not apply to the newer cars. 2020 and 2021 cars never increased in value. 2021s were flat after their introduction and then came down with the rest of the market, while 2021 cars decreased immediately. On average, the 720 Coupe market declined by 8% between May of this year and now, and this excludes the 2022 cars because this only contains one car. Looking at the Spyder market, we can see that the patterns are a bit similar to the ones for the youngest Coupes. Values did not increase significantly compared to the rest of the market. The cars are then also relatively new. Leaving aside model year 2019, due to the low supply, we can see that 2020 values increased by 6% and that this is 3% for the cars from model year 2021. What's the same as for the other models is the drop after May of this year. Values decreased by 8% and this is exactly the same as in the Coupe market. So summing up the 720S market, we can say that values moved slightly different than the market trend. It are only the older cars that went up in value, while the newer cars were flat or started to depreciate immediately. Looking at the supply trend, we can also see that supply in the Spyder market has only been increasing. And this is quite a unique pattern in the market conditions of the last 2 years. Supply in the Coupe market has been fairly stable since May and is hereby more in line with the market trend. Alright, so what about the GT? Personally, I never understood the car, and I think I'm not the only one. But before we have a look at those price trends, if you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by clicking on the like button down below. Thank you. Over here we have the price trend between May of this year and now. I only started to track these prices during last summer, so what we are looking at over here represents the decrease from the market top. After all other models topped during last summer. This time frame, by the way, also applies to the cars that will follow, so keep that in mind. Now in the GT market, prices decreased by 7%. And if you're looking at the details, you might have noticed that the confidence intervals are flattening. But I think it's a bit too optimistic to see this as a sign that the price trend is flattening. There are more low mileage cars for sale right now, and they're also a bit newer. So the market composition is slightly different. Moving on to the 600 LT, we can see a pattern that is similar to the GT market. Prices decreased by 7.7% in the Coupe market and by 8.1% in the Spider market. Supply is also relatively stable, with 30 to 40 cars in the coupe market and 25 to 25 cars in the Spider market. And with that we arrived at the last model, the 765 LT. Over here we have the price trends for the Spiders and the coupes. Between May and now, prices dropped by 12.5% in the coupe market and by 20.8% in the Spider market. But the Spider market is small. Supply started off with 3 cars and sits now at only 12 cars. So when it comes to the price changes, I think that we should rely on the ones in the coupe market. In May there were 21 cars for sale and now there are 36 cars for sale. The confidence intervals are then also a lot smaller. Let's wrap up and conclude. So we covered 8 McLaren models, and that means that we went through many graphs. And I would have probably been completely lost after seeing all of them. So let's start to pull everything together. We started with the question, are McLarens depreciating faster than the market? After all, this is what we saw historically. Now to answer this question, we can take the average rate of the McLarens and compare it to the average market rate. Starting with the McLarens, you can see that most cars lost around 8% compared to their market top. The 650S did slightly better with 6.2%, while the 765 LT did slightly worse with 12.5%. So what about the broader car market? Well, if you watch my videos on a regular basis, then you know that I don't have data for all the cars in the world, but I have data for many of the popular sports and supercars. 2 weeks ago, we had for example a look at the complete Cayman market, and on average, prices decreased by 8.9% compared to the market top, and that's on par with what we can see in the McLaren market. The same applies to the second generation Audi R8 V10. Prices decreased by an average of 7.5%. But more about this market soon in a separate video. Also Corvette C8 prices decreased by 8.5 and 9.5% between May and November. Of course, there are also cars for which the price decrease is much smaller. On average, many 911 models saw a smaller price decrease, but I still need to update the data to get a more accurate result. Cherry picking from the 911 market, we can also find decreases that are close to the ones in the McLaren market. 992 GT3s decreased for example by 6.4% between April and October, while 991.2 base Carreras dropped 7.6% between May and November. Now I think you get my point here. Out of all the cars for which I'm tracking the prices, many saw prices decrease by approximately 8%. Some a bit higher, others a bit lower. As always, there are outliers on both sides of the spectrum. Therefore, going back to the original question, it's fair to conclude that McLarens did not decrease excessively more than the rest of the market. Some other big markets like the Cayman, C8 Corvette and R8 V10 are showing the exact same decrease rate. And this might mean that after some bouncing around, used McLarens finally found their spot in the market. And with that we arrived at the end of this video. Now if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car markets, but would like to see an analysis for a different car, head over to my channel as you will find detailed market analysis for all the cars that were listed in this video. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.